Welcome to the 700 Club. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will do what's necessary to win the war and defeat its enemies. Any deal to end the fighting without defeating Hamas is a non-starter.
Israeli forces continue preparations to launch an assault on the last Hamas stronghold in Rafah, where the remaining hostages may be held captive. Chris Mitchell brings us the story from Jerusalem.
Israeli troops and tanks continue to gather near Rafah for an expected military operation. Rafah is where many believe the leaders of Hamas are hiding, as well as the remaining battalions of Hamas fighters. It's also thought to be the location of the last remaining hostages. While Hamas seems to reject the latest ceasefire offer, it apparently wants negotiations to continue, a tactic that could be intended to forestall the IDF's invasion. But Israel's prime minister says they will move ahead with their plans for an assault.
We will do what is necessary in order to win and overcome our enemies, including in Rafah, in order to secure our future.
Two top Hamas demands are that Israel ends the war against the terrorist group and that all Israeli troops leave the Gaza Strip. But Netanyahu told visiting U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken a deal to end the war without defeating Hamas is a non-starter. Meanwhile, along the northern border, negotiations to broker a peace between Hezbollah and Israel appear stalled. In light of that, Israel's military chief of staff, Herzi Halevi, told commanders Israel is getting ready for an attack on Hezbollah.
You are doing an excellent job of operational defense in the north, and now we are preparing for an offensive operation as well.
Samer Jijia, a prominent Christian politician in Lebanon, says Hezbollah constant attacks on Israel since October 7th are hurting Lebanon more than Israel. The tit-for-tat shellings and bombings have killed 22 Israelis, but the death toll is much higher in Lebanon itself, more than 350. Jijia says Hezbollah should pull all its militia forces away from the Lebanese border with Israel. In a major economic development, Israel's foreign minister, Israel Katz, slammed Turkey's President Erdogan after Turkey announced it's stopping all trade with Israel and banning all imports and exports because of the war in Gaza. Katz said this is how a dictator behaves by ignoring international trade agreements. Turkey is a top trading partner with Israel. Despite some international opposition to Israel, Christians are showing they stand by the Jewish state this weekend with what's called Solidarity Sunday. As part of that, Bishop Robert Stern's group, Eagle's Wings, is bringing Israeli survivors of October 7th to talk to American church congregations.
So American Christians are going to have not only the opportunity, but the responsibility this coming Sunday, Solidarity Sunday, to hear from these survivors firsthand.
Stern says America faces the same battle as Israel.
The battle that Israel is facing is a battle for modern Western democratic values, and all of us have to wake up and understand they're on the front lines, but this battle affects all of us.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
This battle does affect all of us who love freedom, that love freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly. If you want to look at apartheid states, look at what happened in Israel when Jordan controlled the West Bank and East Jerusalem. If you were Jewish, you were not allowed to live or even walk in the Jewish quarter. All the synagogues were destroyed. The Jewish graves were desecrated. The Jordanian army put latrines over Jewish graves. That is what is at stake here. When you look at Israel today and see that it respects all the holy sites, all the major Abrahamic religions, it's the only country in the Middle East where the Christian population is actually growing. When you see all of that, that is what is at stake. And we here in America need to recognize that. And when you hear the call from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, what that call is for the elimination of the Jewish people in Israel, completely wiping them out, wiping out even their memory, destroying every synagogue, killing every Jew. That's what that means. That is not freedom, and we need to stand with Israel in this fight. In other news, police have arrested nearly 2,200 people during the pro-Palestinian demonstrations in recent weeks. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. As the violence spread during some of the protests, President Biden spoke out against it after being criticized by Republicans for staying silent. His remarks and the ongoing protests coming as collegiate graduation ceremonies began this weekend. CBN's Brody Carter has that story.
We've all seen the images. It's against the law when violence occurs.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
President Biden breaking days of silence after scenes like these unraveled across campuses over the Israel-Gaza war.
Breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest.
They won't stop at anything short of divestment. And what divestment means is any company doing business in Israel, especially with the Israeli government. So that includes companies like, Alphabet and Amazon who have deals in Israel. It includes companies like Airbnb, who's, they host homes that are in settlements in the West Bank.
Until these demands are met, we do not have any plans of leaving.
While many demonstrations began peacefully, the tone quickly escalated. At Columbia University, police stormed a university building occupied by protesters, arresting nearly 300. In California, authorities disbanded a UCLA encampment after arresting at least 200 protesters. And in D.C., CBN's Tara Mergener saw a somewhat more peaceful scene at George Washington University.
Behind me, you can hear protesters shouting from the metal barricades they tore down and then placed the Palestinian flag on top. All around are dozens of tents with both students and non-students camping out around the clock.
Images on their shirts and yelling the chants, death to Jews, all of that. I mean, that's clearly anti-Semitism.
Northwestern University grad student Susan Radoff represents at least 300 Jewish students in the Kellogg School of Management.
And so it's really quite shocking to see these kids and a lot of adults too, community members, trying to make this a very black and white issue, act like experts on the issue when they're not, and then virtue signal to others and shame others who are not with them. I've heard of friendships that have been broken over this.
All of this played out as bipartisan lawmakers passed the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act Thursday, securing stronger protection for Jewish students subject to harassment, intimidation, and violence.
There should be no place on any campus, no place in America for anti-Semitism or threats of violence against Jewish students.
USC has canceled its main stage graduation ceremony due to campus protests, while several others are considering similar measures due to safety concerns. Brody Carter, CBN News.